let's skip that. We can talk about later. So that is HTML. And then now we go to HTML and CSS, right? So when you think of CSS, it's the styling of a web page. So think of a house, right? Before we have a house with no color, and now we paint the house. Maybe we add some flowers on the sides to make the house looks good. So CSS of a web page is very similar to that. It's a painting of the web page. It's to set up the style, how the web page looks like after you have structured the HTML. And then we're moving on to the last part, but last but also not least, is JavaScript. So JavaScript is actually the component, the core that make a website interactive. So think of the example of the house, right? You build the house, you paint it, you make add things that make it look nice. Is it livable now? Yeah, but maybe something may be missing. We're missing water, we're missing the utility, we're missing, the electricity system. How about the heating system, right? All the components that make the house smart and interactive. So that is JavaScript, the role of JavaScript to a web page. So think of all of these three components make a web page interactive, looks nice, clean, and functional. Just like you have different parts that makes the house lively and appealing to live at. So yeah, those are the role of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I hope that make it more understandable. If you have any question, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will jump straight to the sticky note project. Okay, so before that, this is what we're going to build today. A very simple app that have some input field where you enter something in, you will and then you hit send. This will get shown on your screen. So what I want you to do is maybe everyone, I will code along with you. Open up your VS Code or any editor, just an empty one. We don't need, yeah, there's no need to preset up for this. Just open an HTML, open an empty directory, and that should be sufficient. So I will give people a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, and next I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so once everybody have finished creating the directory and then have a version of VS Code ready on your computer, please give me a thumbs up. All right, I'm going to give a couple more minutes here so everybody have that ready. In the meantime, I want to open mine with VS Code. Okay, so it looks like all right, 1 second. My computer is a little slow today. I think we should open the bear. And if anyone still need help with opening VS Code and then create a bear directory, feel free to raise your hand, and then maybe we can create a waiting room to help you with that. Okay, so it looks like everybody is good on that, having that VS Code ready. I'm gonna go ahead and create a file. So just like I said, we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? In this project, we're gonna have 3 files. So the first thing is index.html, and this is our HTML file. And the second is we're going to have the style.css. And the third is we're going to have script.js, which is our JavaScript file. Okay, so once everybody finished creating that, please give me a thumbs up in the reaction, and then we can follow up. All right. If people still have issue like creating the file, please leave your comment in the chat, and then we can create a breakout room for Vin to have you troubleshooting it. All right. So if no one has having any issue, we can continue. So for HTML file, the first thing is HTMLs are made of elements. So and one thing is HTML is not a like a programming language, just like what we have with JavaScript, Python, C++, or Java. It's just a markup language. So what's different here? A markup language doesn't contain logic in it. So it's more of like having the structure of a web page and styling, but it doesn't have a logic. So that's why we need to employ JavaScript on the side to create a logic. Like, let's say when we click a button, what are we going to do with after we click the button, right? What action we're going to trigger? So that is what behind the scene JavaScript want to handle that. Okay, so I want you to type along with me, and there's some part of it might not really understandable, but we're going to explain later. The first part, we could just focus on making something work first. Okay, so first we have doc type HTML, which will notify our editor that this is an HTML file. And then we can create an HTML element here. And in this markup language that are made of elements, they are open, and for every element, they're open and closing brackets. So what's different between them is that the opening one doesn't have the slash, as you can see here. Line number 4, we have a closing one, which is a slash. So we have the opening and the closing. So the slash stay in front of the right before the name of the element. Okay, and then moving on, we have the head, which just like its name. So head in HTML is the setup of the of a web page. So for the head, I can, if we want to set up the title, I can say this is sticky note, and we will when you open this web page, we will have sticky notes show up. So why don't we go here and open this web page right in your browser? If you double click on that, you should be able to see just a bare web page right here, right? But there's nothing there because we have not added anything, but you can see on our title is this sticky notes. So if I would like to change something, if I would like to change this to update this to sticky notes, right? If I refresh my browser, you can, in Mac, I think it's Command R, and in Windows is F5. You will see this is sticky notes. This is now updated, right? So that is the title of a web page. And up next, that's the basic of our head. And then later on, if you want to link an element, link our style to this web page, right? We want to connect them together. You want to use the link component, and then the reference will be we go to style sheet and href. Href represent the source of our the path to our CSS file, right? So in this case, as you can see, I have the CSS file right here. So I can just write ./style.css, and I would close this component here. So is there anybody notice something different about this link component? Please leave in the chat compared to the like title head HTML. That's right. Yeah, it doesn't have the closing link. So some components in some element in HTML are self-closing. In this case, you know, the self-closing link is a self-closing one, so it's just closed by itself, right? So it's you have link slash, and that's it. You don't have another link, right? Some component you don't need to put anything in the middle, so that's why they are self-closing. Okay, and now moving on, we want to link our script, right? Script.js. What we're going to do is we add the script element here, and then we have src, which stands for source, right? And just like what we did with CSS, we do the same thing, but for JavaScript. So our JavaScript file in this case is script.js. We'll link it here. Okay, and script, unlike link, is a double is a open that has opening and closing element. So you have to close it here. And moving on. So we're done with the head of our HTML CSS file, right? Now let's move on to the body of the file, right? So for the body, this is what, you know, usually by rule of thumb, this is what's going to show up in the main screen here of the your web page. Head is the setup, and usually show up in either here is the what behind the scene, or in the tab here, right? The title. But in the body is what we're gonna put the main thing that show up in the entire page here. So in the body, let's put in div, and div is one of the most important element in HTML, which is it has enclosed the you can put div in that enclose every single other element. So I want to put div here. Okay, and then ID is equal to main. I'm going to put an ID here. So for every single element, you would have an ID and a class. So ID is just like its name, is identity. So ID should be unique in all the web page. In the entire web page, ID should be unique to an element, right? Whereas for a class, you can put multiple. So class doesn't have to be unique. Let me put out a note here. So so ID must be unique. Classes can be can be duplicated. So what I mean by classes can be duplicated, right? So if I put in another element here, right? And if I put in class is equal to, let's say they both have the same class, right? So say container, this is acceptable by JavaScript, sorry, by HTML. So container, you can have multiple classes in our HTML pages, and each of them can be shared by different elements. But for ID, it has to be unique. So if I put in ID here, and I say if ID is equal to main, well, let's try to open a web page, right? Let's refresh it. It will not show an error because remember, as I said at the beginning, HTML is not a programming language. It's a markup language, so it doesn't check for your error. You can just type. You can type all the You can type anything on your page, and HTML would not complain about it, right? Double check here. Yeah, it would not complain about it. But for the ID, this is very helpful for JavaScript because later on we're gonna use JavaScript to, choose a component, right? Choose an element, apply some changes to it, and that's why the ID has to be unique, right? Because what if you choose different, just use multiple, then it's very confusing, and that's why ID belongs to among all the web page by the rule of thumb. IDs has to be unique, and classes can contain duplicate, right? Okay, so now we have our div here. Let's add something in between. So we have let's stick with the Figma file, right? So the Figma, we have, it'll take some time to load here. So in the Figma, this is our design, right? We have what's on your mind, right? That's the header. That's the header of our page. So we want to add it to our page, right? So let's add it there. I'm gonna add another div element, and let's give them the good practices. For every single element, you always put an ID in it, right? So that's how you can later on, if you want to apply some change, you want to pick that element, you can use that ID to choose that element, and it should be unique. So I can say welcome prompt, and then for this, I can put in another class, which is container. Okay, now in here, I would put in the header of our welcoming note. So I can put in H2, and H2, if H stand for header, and if somebody already did like Microsoft Word, H2, H1, from H1, H2, H3 up to H5 is the header, and as the number increase, the size of the text increase, right? So in this case, H1 might be a little, if you look at our design, H1 might be a little too big. So I will stick with H2, and it will be what's on your mind. Okay, and now if you reload the page, it show up right here, right? Next, we're gonna add another session, and session is very similar to div, but it's just a way to signify that this is a session of the page, right? So we want to build the input field, which is a session, this session right here of our page, and then we have the session element. Now I'm just gonna put a class here, and it can be empty. We can add something later. And moving on, we want to, let's see what we need, right? We need an input area and we need a button. And wrap around that, we need some border here, right? So to do that, we're gonna have a div element where we're gonna put in an ID, and I call this editor, right? This is this entire thing here, right? This is not just the input, but also the button and the surrounding border, right? And then around that, I would have a class. I put a container here. It will share some characteristic of the outside div here, but I will start it later. Okay. And then within that, I will put in a text area. And then in here, I would put the name of this text area as node input, and the ID will be input, right? And then now we have the input field, right? What else do we need? We need the button, right? So I want to create a div here. And then I would say is ID is equal to then node container. All right, and then within this send node container, within this div element, I'm going to have a button, and which is this one right here, right? The send button here. So I'm going to put in a button element, and then within it, I'm going to put in just like a submit, right? Some text in here, right? And then the ID would be send node button. And then if we click this button, we need some action going on, right? So that should be, there's some in HTML, there's a tag to do that, which is on click. So when this means that when you click this button, we're gonna run some action in JavaScript, right? So it will be something here, and I want to add it later. For now, we can just leave it empty. Okay, and now moving on, let's just refresh our page and see how our things looks like, right? So we have what on your mind. We have an input box, and we have submit, which might not look as good as what we expect, right? Yet this is what we want, and this is what we have so far, right? But the reason is we have not added CSS to our web page yet. So we're gonna do it later, but right now we finished building the base of our house first, right? So we have a div element here, and then next is we're gonna have, if you can see, we have a page divider here, right? This is a line, so I'm gonna put an HR here. All right, looks like we have a question. Not the fixed block coming. Yeah, we're gonna have Flexbox later when we do the styling. So we're gonna add HR element here, and then we have a class for it called page divider. Okay, so let's refresh our page and see how it looks like. There we go. We have a page. We have a line here. Moving on to the next session, we have notes. And then we have some of these notes right here, right? So we can create another session, and we can put a class to it, and we add something here later, right? So now let's create add a div in the middle, and then I can call this as ID equal to nodes group, right? And then remember to put a class here, but we will add them later. Okay, and then now within this, let's take a look back at our design, right? Within this node, what do we have? We have the note. We have the notes, which is the title here, and then we have some of the note group here, right? So it looks like we have two main things, right? We have this note header. So I can just put an ID called notes header. And then class, I put it later here. And then within here, I put in h2 note, right? And then after this note header, we move on to an order list. So in HTML, there's there to have a list, right? And in this case, we have a list of nodes here, right? So in HTML, to create a list, you have to wrap it around. You should wrap it around a an order list element. So in this case, we have UL, and then we put an ID hit to it. So we call it notes, right? So basically, so far we kind of finished the basic structure of our web page, right? Let's refresh it. Okay, so we have the title, we have the input box, we have the submit button, the page divider, and notes, the note header, and later on when we have notes here, we're gonna add them here, right? But now we have the basic. So before we move on to the next session, is anyone have a question on regarding this part? I'm happy to answer them. All right. So I guess moving right along, we do have questions. The last input, which line and what was it? Yeah, here, let me go back. So we actually have a text area here, the node input here at line number 16. We put a name as node input and the ID is input, right? So yeah, that is the node input here. Is that the same thing that you want to see? Okay, I think we can continue. If I hope that helps. Otherwise, like feel free to leave a comment in the chat, or we can join a breakout room later. Okay, so now we have our HTML kind of finished, right? Pretty simple. We can move on to the JavaScript, which is what, as I said, is the electricity of our system, of our house, right? So what do we need here? If you think of this entire page, like what do we need for our JavaScript? We only need one function, right? Which is sending the node at the bottom here. We can think of the checkbox and the delete node later, but for now, we can focus on one single function, which is send notes, right? Oh, we'll share the recording later after this session. So yeah, don't worry. We share it in the Discord channel. Okay, so continue. So we have only one function we need so far, right? We have a note here. We're gonna click send, and something there's a new note should show up here, right? So to do that, and we're gonna write it within our script here, right? So to do that, let's go to script.js and let's define our function, right? So just as we spoke about it last time, to define a function in JavaScript, you use a keyword function, and then let's give a name to our function. Let's call it setNote, right? All right. In the body of our function, and I would highly recommend this kind of approach to whenever you code, you define what you want from the function and what should it output, right? So what we want is, and this is just me commenting so that it's easier for you to follow. But if you don't want to, you don't have to code this part. So we want to take the note from the input box, right? That's number one. And then number two, we want to clear the note from the input box, right? Because if you type something here, right, and literally when you click submit, we want this field to empty itself, right? And then the third thing is we want to add the note to our at the bottom of our notes list, right? That's three things. So it should be a pretty simple function, right? So so we're gonna start with the first step, right? We need to take the note from the input box. How do we do that? So moving back to our text area right here, right? What is unique about this element? We have the ID is equal to input, right? Linking back to what I said at the beginning, right? Why are the input should be, why are the IDs should be unique themselves? Because we're gonna use this ID to select an element, right? And if the ID are not unique, you're gonna have multiple elements, and it's very hard for you to it's very hard to you might make mistakes choosing the wrong element, right? So in JavaScript, to choose this text area, let's call it input element. Okay. And then in JavaScript, to pick an element, we have a function called get element by ID, right? And in here, you put in an ID, and that is why an ID of an element should be unique, right? And then somebody asked, well, Peter, what is this document here, right? Where do you get this from? So document, think about it as like a Swift Swift knife, like a toolbox with a bunch of function, right? If you put in document dot right here, you'll see a bunch of like reference, right? There's a lot of functions that we can use to modify our HTML, to modify our web page. And that's what document is about, is a global variable. It's already provided by us. And get element by ID is a function that we can get from this document object, and to fetch an element with a unique ID, right? So now we have the input element, right? Now we need to get the content of the element, right? Whatever it is in our text box, right? The way we do that is we gonna have another variable called note content, and then this will be input element dot value, right? This is the value. Oops. This is the value of our text area. Whichever we type here is the value there, right? And now so we kind of finished the first step, right? Whichever the first step here, we want to kind of take it out here. And then now we move on to the second step, right? which is clear the node from the input box. Now we have this input element here, and then dot value to empty this. We can do input element dot value is equal to an empty string, right? So let's give it a try, and then see if at this step, right, what our function do. So we clear out the second step, right? And now we save this. Let's come back to our HTML page. So send note is a function, right? And you can define a lot of functions. You can define any of the function within a script.js file. Now we want to run this function, right? So thinking back to our flow, when I click into this submit button here, I want a note to show up right there. That's why we need to put this function under onClick. So I can put a function send note right here. So what does this do? What it does is that when you click onto this submit button, a note will show up. Or we will run the send note button, right? We will run this send note button imported from the script.js file here, and the reason that our HTML file recognize this function send note is because we already imported at the beginning of our page, right? We had at line number 6, we have script.js, we already reference it here. So that's why all the element from script.js will be referenced to our page right here, right? Okay, so now we only done 2 tasks so far, right? We take the notes from the input box and clear the note from the input box, right? But let's give it a try. The job not done, but let's give it a try to make sure that we already done these 2 tasks so far. So if we refresh the browser, right, I'm gonna put in hello, and if I click submit, there we go. So our input box is being clear, right? And thanks to the magic of JavaScript, right? You can type anything here. This is Mesa U. If I tap submit, it will always disappear. It will also disappear. Thanks to this, 3 simple JavaScript file, right? So if you see the same on your screen, please give me a thumbs up to make sure that just following along and everything's working fine. All right. Okay. So I saw some thumbs up there. If anyone have a question, please feel free to leave it in the chat. We're happy to answer them. But okay, let's continue. So we have last final task here, which is also very important, right? We have these nodes. Now we need to use them, right? So to create an element in JavaScript, we can use this document function called document.createElement. So I want to create a new node here called new node, and then equal to document. And then there should be a reference for you here, right? Create element, right? And then to create this element, I'm gonna put in this li right here. So what li stand for, you may ask me? Well, li is equal to list, right? But in JavaScript, we tend to kind of like abbreviate it, right? So like, for example, in this case, UL stand for unordered list, right? And then coming back to our script file, li stand for list, and that's it. We have a list of nodes, and each of them will have an li element, right? So we create an element here, we save it to our new node here, so we can kind of reference it later, right? Now I want to change I want to save this node content right here to our new node. What do? I can just say new node dot inner HTML, and then I will assign node content to it, right? And then now we have this new node. Are we done yet? No, we're not done yet. We need to add this node to our list, right? So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the all nodes element. So we can do it by document and use our very good friend get element by ID, right? And in the middle here, we put in a piece of ID, right? So what is our ID here? Notes, right? This list right here. So I can just put notes here, right? And that's why as I said at the beginning, it's always a good practice to put ID in all the important elements of your web page. Okay, and now last but not least, we need to add this notes to our combination to our bucket of notes here, right? So we're gonna do that by allNode.append child, right? Because all the within here, we're gonna add something in the middle here, right? Within here, all the element that underneath that is wrapped by the unordered list element is called its children, right? So that's why it's append child. Append child, and then in the parameter of this function, we're gonna put a new note. All right. So that is just the gist of our function. That's the basic of our function, right? Let's go back to our web page and see how's things going on right now. So remember to hit refresh because then it will get the newest version of your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript file. Okay, let's do for Thanksgiving buy turkey, right? There's a note. There we go. We have a note here, right? If I add another note, let's say I need to buy more Red Bull. There we go. We have our note added there, right? So which is very simple, like this is a few lines of JavaScript code, right? I would say this is like 7 lines of JavaScript code. We have a simple, very minimal version of the to-do list app. Disclaimer: we will not stop here because we need to start, right? This is what we want, right? This is like the version of the meme, hey mom, I want that Spider-Man. We have a Spider-Man at home, and this is Spider-Man at home, right? We don't want that. We want the OP version. So we should continue. Mine isn't working. Okay. Yeah. So okay, I will jot down. Well, then I think you can create like you can create a breakout room later, or you can create now to help her immediately. Yeah. Okay. All right. Continue. Well, actually, I think we should leave it by the end of the class. Yeah. I think we should leave it by the end of class. Okay, so moving on. All right, so we have the JavaScript thing ready. Now we need styling, right? And styling is very important too. Now I want this what on your mind to stay in the middle of my screen, right? What do? I have what was on your mind right here, right? So I need to choose I need to pick this element right here and pick the container and style them. So to style this component in JavaScript, we have in CSS, we can choose the classes and the ID. So this one right here, the ID is main. I can just pick this ID here, call it main, and to pick an ID, to select an ID, right? You use this pound key, right? So you use pound key followed by the ID to select the element, all right? And then I want this to stay in the center of my screen, right? What I do is take align, center. Okay, and sooner or later you realize the same format of this like CSS. You realize the format of CSS like properties, which is usually they have like the dash in the middle of the name, right? So like I can just leave a comment here, CSS properties names, property names are usually divided by a dash. Okay, so we have text align center, right? And then if we refresh this page, there we go. All right, now it's look kind of closer, right? Because we adding some painting to our house, right? Kind of getting closer to there. All right, now I want some padding to my page, right? Because as you can see here, right, the line in this page, the line doesn't go to the entire page. It doesn't spread the entire page, right? We have some gap in between the page to make it look more elegant. So we need to do the same thing here. In CSS, we have padding. So we have padding left is equal to 15. We can say VW, and I'm gonna add another comment here. 15. Well, VW stand for equal to view width. Right. So think of our page is like 100, right? So entire page is equal to 100 view width, right? So this our entire page here. That is 100 view width, right? 15 is like think of, hey, I'm gonna take 15% of this view width and I use it as a padding. That's what this line for, 15% of the view width, right? And then I'm gonna add another padding to the right. So padding right is equal to 15 view width as well. And then I want each of my element to have the gap in between them, right? I don't want them to sit too close together. So I would say gap is equal to 20 pixel, right? And then now let's refresh our page, see something. All right, there we go. We have something closer to the our original like wireframe, right? We have padding. Now I want to add more thing in there, and then let's see our friend's container here, right? So as I mentioned, I put in the container, and I want another thing is I can put in multiple classes here. I can put in column, and what I want in column is I want all the element here in my screen to stay as like one single column. I don't want to stack like horizontally together, right? I want all of them to be all vertical. Like what's on your mind, go to the next line, have an input box, go to the next line, this line here, and then so showing all the nodes, right? So that's why I put a column here, container and column. And these are just the classes. They doesn't do the styling job, but we're going to style them later. So I can put in container and choose a so now in CSS to pick a class, you just do the keyword is you do the dot, you follow by the class name, right? So I can put a comment here to choose a class, use a dot follow by the class name. Okay, so container. I want to style this component right here, right? What I would do, I would add some padding here as well. Padding, and let's say 15 pixel. I want to add padding to all the kind of direction or the angle of this component, top, bottom, left, right. So that's why I add padding 15 pixel here. And I want my I want to add make this a little more curvy, right? Now it's look kind of pretty much kind of pointy, and it's not what we want. One is to have look more visually appealing. So we can add something like border radius, and we add 20 pixel. What this line does is that we want to curve our text area, curve all the elements which has this style of container, or have this class of container by 20 pixel, right? The border will be curved by 20 pixel. And then another thing I want to add is justify content center, right? Because I want my element to align the center as well, right? And then another thing is we have a column, right? So column, we would have display, flex, and then flex direction, column, right? Putting these two will guarantee that our web page has all the elements will be aligned as a column, right? So we have container and the column. Let's go to our welcome prompt, right? We also have container here, and this is what I said before. Like a class can be used by multiple elements, right? If they all share the same characteristic, they all gonna be they style gonna be all apply here, right? So let's refresh our page real quick. All right, it looks a little different, right? So the reason is one thing we find missing, right? We don't have the line anymore. So anybody has an idea where to go? Our line, we did not delete them, right? But it disappeared on the screen, right? We still have it. We still have it here in the HR component. We still have it here, right? Well, the reason is now we change it to we change the page to all appearing by column. Every single element should have a width. So that's why our line disappeared. To bring it back to our screen, we need to set the page divider right here and set a width to it, right? So you see that this class here is page divider. How do we select it? Dot page divider, and then we set a width, right? And for this page divider, of course, I want a width to be the entire page. So the width should be 100%, right? Let's refresh it. There we go. We bring our friend back, right? Now continue to on our web page. So we have the container. Now let's and then what's on your mind? Staying at the beginning. That looks good. Let's go to our session, right? In our session here, we also wanted to display in the middle as well. So we put container class equal to container there. And then we would have oh sorry, we should is put it row. My bad. Row, and then flex center, right? So flex center is what we're gonna put an element of the another class that we going to put underneath here to put an element at the center. So we can do flex center, and then in here we can just say just define content center, right? It's very similar to the text align center here, but this is property applied for a flex box, right? So remember our content is our container is a flex box, so we should add it there. Okay, we have flex center there, and then moving on to our editor, right? We have a container, and then we want everything to align as a column. So we put column in there, and then we put inner container. And this is another classes we're going to change later, but now we have column here. So all the element will display vertically in the line. There we go. So we have our input box kind of larger, right? And now we want to remember that we want to wrap everything together, right? So the submit button should be within this. So submit button should be wrapped within a line right here, right? So that's why we need to style our editor class as editor element as well, right? So we can just pick editor and then add some styling in the middle. So for the editor, we want to first we want to have it for a border. So for the border, I can just do border 1 pixel, solid black, and there we go. We have a border, right? And then it's curvy because this is the editor also get applied as a container, right? And then now I want to remove this border around here, right? So I can select this text area. Oops, there. So this is the border of the text area. I can just choose it. So the ID is equal to input. So I can just select input, right? And then I can just say border 0. This means 0 pixel. We would not have border for this. And the width is 100%. And the height, because we want to save some space for submit button, right? So height could be 95%. Oops, there. Let's refresh it. There we go. We have our border removed, right? But you see that when you click on it, right? There's still the border still exists. And this is the outline. This is the property of a text area, the text area component right here. So we also want to remove it as well. And to do that, we can just select input, put when the outline happens. Okay. And then we can say, oops, select focus. So when we focus, it means that when we select the element here, right? When we click on it, then the focus property will turn on. And then we want to say outline is equal to none. Okay, so if we refresh the page, now our outline is gone, right? So that is the basic styling of our session here. I think we're running out of time on today's lecture, but we can continue finishing the styling of this web page tomorrow. We have a basic kind of structure here, and then we can make it look, embellish it, make it look closer to our design here later. We're getting closer. So yeah, flex center selection real quick. Yep. So flex center here. There we go. Justify content center. Does it looks good? Okay. And then yeah, and then we're gonna open some we're gonna open a room so that people can come in and get help. But yeah, I think that's just today's lecture, and then we can continue on the styling tomorrow. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and we're gonna create breakout room because yeah, we have questions.
So ideally tomorrow we're gonna finish up this project and then ideally get the OpenAI key so people can start using.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna end recording.